Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Misty Luminais. I am here with Shaii White, who is a community researcher for the Voicing in Action project. We are doing the interview for the community researcher portion of the Voicing in Action project. It is September 23rd, 2014. So, Shaii, tell me about your experience with the Voicing in Action project.
My experience. Well, so far it's been pleasurable. It's been memorable. I would say maybe the most memorable part is being able to pull so many people out of community together in order to participate in this project. Initially, it seemed a bit overwhelming, and maybe to me specifically, because I had participated in another oral narrative project previously, and it was a lot of time and effort that went into it, getting folks to agree to be interviewed. But this has been very pleasant. I guess I'd say maybe the outpouring of love and commitment and dedication that comes from each and every one of the community researchers, their dedication is admirable in many ways. But it's been a pleasant experience so far.
And can you describe for me your role in the Voicing in Action project?
Well, technically, I'm the administrator for the Social Justice Institute, but my role in the Voicing in Action project has been as a community researcher, which means I've had an opportunity to interview people in community about their personal lives and living in the city of East Cleveland.
And how has your perception of the community changed due to your involvement with the project?
My perception. So, let's see. I don't know necessarily that my perception has changed as much as my desire to see things in the city as a whole change. Meeting people, people that are residents of the city, and hearing their stories is it's interesting, but to watch them in action, participate in the city and helping to rebuild it is another dynamic of this entire project. So for me, I guess I'd say maybe becoming more involved with the people on a one-on-one basis. I never lived in the city of East Cleveland, but I lived very closely to the city of East Cleveland, and throughout my lifetime, especially during my teenage years, I used to bike around the city of East Cleveland because I have relatives who live there. And it's just always seemed like a very friendly, tightly knit group of people, and I don't think that's changed. The love, I guess I would say the love they have for their city and their community, for me, it hasn't changed. This project helped to illuminate that in different ways, but I don't think it's changed much.
Okay. And how did the Voicing in Action project compare to the Snickerfritz project?
Well, the Snickerfritz project, there were just two people, myself and Nancy Nolan Jones. And our project, the Snickerfritz Community Time Capsule Project, was actually a time capsule project. Our goal was to get folks to talk about all of the wonderful things about the city in preparation for folks 10 years down the line who will open this capsule, so they'll be able to look back and see who was around, what were the wonderful things that were happening. We took pictures, we got memorabilia from different people who've been sort of, I'd say, the foundation of the city, business-wise and otherwise, for probably as long as I can remember. So our project was more of, I guess, maybe a feel-good project. We wanted people to be excited about the prospect of looking ahead 10 years and what will children, the information children will be able to uncover and the information that other folks will be able to use and could compare. Say in this is 2014, so in 2024, if they open the capsule, what were going to be the things that were similar? What are the consistencies that remain, which businesses are still there. There are businesses that have been in East Cleveland, say 20, 25 years, and I think it would be really interesting to see if 25 years down the line, these businesses are still there, that sort of thing. So to me, that was the difference. This was more, as I said, a feel-good project. We asked people for their memories, for great pictures, to tell us wonderful stories, and then to say something very positive about the city that you want other folks to know. So it wasn't, as we say, a deep dive. It was more of a feel-good piece, something to unite folks and to give them some positive things to think about in the middle of all the other, not so nice things that are taking place or things that have been said about the city. So I guess that's an answer.
Okay, so having said all of that, how is the Voicing Action Project different from that?
The Voicing and Action Project differed in the fact that we are truly interested in the biases that have taken place in people's lives as a result of being residents of the city and as a result of being a person of color, people of color. East Cleveland, to my understanding, is predominantly African American. There are questions about racism and inequalities, that sort of thing, inequities. And those were not questions that we were asking in our project. I'm looking at the two now as you say so. And again, I keep using the term feel good, but this was supposed to be a project that sort of endeared the city to you. Endeared other people in your community. You had a chance to come together and laugh about things that used to happen and remember the Friends of the Library and, the many events and affairs that they, pulled together for the city. And that's just to name one or two different businesses in the city. But the Voicing and Action Project was looking for, I don't want to say necessarily a more humane perspective, but they were really looking for a humanistic view of, how it feels to be in a city that other people view sort of as something that is a has-been city. A lot of people do refer to East Cleveland as the city that once was, or I remember when East Cleveland was. You never really hear about what East Cleveland is doing now. So I think, to me, those are the differences. This was the deeper dive, the Voicing Action Project.
And was there any particular interview that changed the way you thought about, without using names, that changed the way you thought about particular individuals in the community?
Was there a particular interview? I want to say no, but that may be because I'm filing through my mind really quickly to see if anything stands out. So can I think about that as we go on if I come across something that, okay, before you go on, I can think of one thing, the interview with Sean Braxton. I thought that was very honest and very open. Those are the kind of interviews I like. Even if I'm on, turning on the TV and there's some type of expose, I love for the information to be very authentic. And he came across to me as being very authentic, very caring, and very honest about who he is, where he comes from, and how he's come to be who he is, and the reasons surrounding that. So that's the first thing I think of. Is his interview. I'm sure there are others as we go along, but that one I'd say right now that's what stands out. Okay.
And so it sounds like maybe not necessarily that your perception of the community hasn't changed, but that your ideas about what the community is doing in order to make change is different. Does that sound right?
I would say yes, because when you're on the outside, your perspective and your perceptions are askew. Even though I have family who've lived in East Cleveland, I have friends that have lived in East Cleveland, and I travel through East Cleveland, especially recently, almost on a daily basis. You see things, you hear things, you read things, but until you're actually side by side with folks. And I'm going to give one example, and this is my perception. I attended the funeral of Mildred Brewer, former councilperson Mildred Brewer, And there were so many people. Now, I've heard all kinds of things about the former council person, and she was I thought she was a very nice lady. And again, she was what I would consider an authentic personality. She didn't cut corners, she didn't mince words. She said what was on her mind, and that was it. And I've heard mixed reactions about who she is and what she represented. But a lot of times I've heard folks say that, when you pass, the indication of what kind of person you are truly is reflected in the funeral. And it was just amazing that so many people came out, whether it was, no matter how they felt, they left it at the door, but they were there to pay their respects and again, my perception. But to me, that says a lot about East Cleveland as well. It's like a family, you don't always get along. There's an uncle or a brother. Sometimes your mom and dad really, makes you angry. But in the end, who has your back? Who's there for you? And this is the community. And that's kind of East Cleveland. I can remember my stepfather years ago talking about what a great place East Cleveland was because everybody on the street knew each other. So for me, I grew up in an atmosphere where everyone on my street knew each other. I grew up, when I spent time with my grandparents, everyone on their street knew each other. But that was Cleveland proper, and then that was Cleveland Heights. That was not living in East Cleveland. So amidst all the negative things you'd hear, all of these positives would come out. And for me, maybe the underlying theme of all of that is that people in East Cleveland really do look at themselves as a family. They know everyone knows everyone. Everyone's attended elementary school together, middle school together. Everybody seems to have graduated from Shaw High School. They all come back to the city. They all come back and buy property in the city. Their children are here. Their grandchildren are here. Their great-grandchildren are here. So to me, that speaks volumes. No matter what other perceptions are, there is some truth to the cohesiveness of that community.
And so you said when you were doing this Tiger Fits project that you interviewed business leaders and people that were well known in the city.
Yes.
How was that different than the Voicing in Action project, which focuses really on interviewing kind of everyday folks?
That was it. Now, we did have interviews with people that were everyday folks, but what we decided to do was to go to the people who have been there the longest, people who've had very successful businesses, people like Wallace Davis, who owns the funeral home, or Mr. Cipriani, Earl Cipriani, who owned Angela Mia's Pizza, that I can remember when I was 15 and 16, how we could not wait to get down the hill to get a slice of Angela Mia's Pizza. And here I am, 30-odd years, 40-odd years later, and people still run for Angela Mia's Pizza, and it still tastes exactly the same. So for us, we wanted to highlight those foundational pieces, businesses, constituents who have been sort of the icons of East Cleveland, that when you think East Cleveland, you say pizza, Angela Mia. Angela Mia has a Facebook page. And he actually ships pizzas around the country to folks who used to live in the city that really want the pizza. So to me, that says a lot. But again, as I said, we wanted the capsule to be a point of interest so that 10 years ahead, folks could look back. And, even new people coming into the city that see this time capsule, they'll know who's been there. Who are the people that have really had staying power. Like Bill Cabb, like Earl Cipriani, like Ed Parker, Dr. Parker. So I think that was the difference. And it wasn't that we didn't focus on just sort of the everyday person. I think our perception was just more the foundational points, what really keeps the city running kind of a thing. So we did interview the mayor and a few other people in City Hall, Mike Smetley being one of them. I believe we do have an interview with Belinda Carlisle. I'm not exactly sure. At least I know she was on the list at some point. But just, we thought that would have as clear a message maybe as the Voicing in Action project. But this was before I even knew the Voicing in Action project was going to exist. So, yeah, I would have to say that's it.
So was there anything in particular that surprised you about interviewing kind of people that were either newer to East Cleveland or younger?
As part of the Voicing Action Project? I don't want to say surprise, but in a way it was. No matter how young or how old, everybody loves East Cleveland. So, and it's not a surprise, but maybe I should say it's a good surprise. It's good to hear. Because when you get the same answers generationally, then that means something is going on right. You know, you have folks, just say hypothetically, you interview someone 18 or 19, and they talk about all the things that their grandparents did, that their parents did. And maybe perhaps their parents met in high school at Shaw, and now they're attending Shaw, you know. So, yeah, I would just say that everyone who lives in East Cleveland and who's associated with East Cleveland has the same perception. So,
Are you sure? Because I can think of a couple of people who not only have different perceptions but have pretty negative views.
well, sans those. I'm speaking of generally to me, for me, overall, when you talk to folks, of course, you're going to get some negatives. You're going to have people that are in the city that can point out every single thing that's wrong. But for every one that sees something wrong, I bet there are 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 that could point out what's right about it. So maybe from that perspective. I just think it's wonderful when you can cross generations and you can still get the same amount of pride when people talk about their city and the things they remember. And even though, as I understand it, there's so many things that no longer exist in East Cleveland, people are still happy being there. So something is working.
Awesome. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. What skills have you learned?
Listening, observing, listening. And this is going to sound funny maybe, that when you're speaking, you shouldn't say or interrupting someone when they're talking. You know, they say something that triggers something in your mind and you automatically want to offer whatever that adage is, you know, holding your tongue and listening. I would say that's what I've learned. Also to be open to other people's stories. Not everyone is socialized the same way in their family or in their community or even academically. And that we basically are all the same. We all want the same thing. We want to live in a community where there's love and there's peace and there's prosperity, little to no crime. And I'm saying little to no crime because I don't know how idealistic it is to assume that you will live in a crime-free, you know, anywhere here in our country. But yeah, I would say that. Yeah. The observing, the listening. What else did I learn? How committed people are to uplifting the city, to holding it to its highest standard, to reclaiming maybe that standard. I keep going back to interviews where folks talked about how strict the police officers were. And on one hand, it can be viewed as a negative, that no matter what you were doing when you came through the city, you know, there's a chance that the police officers would stop you. But from another perspective, for people in the city, they had to make them feel comfortable. Even though it may have been racially motivated oftentimes, but from the other perspective, you know, you're in a city where everybody knows everyone, then everybody's really looking out for everyone. And when things look suspicious, you really should say something. So, you know, and I'm sure I could get a lot of flack from people for a number of reasons, but the reality is there's always another truth. There's what you see, there's what happened, and then there is the reality, you know. So, and that's for me. This is for me. So, but yeah, I'd say that.
So, returning to your idea about listening and observing as a skill, how exactly did you learn those skills?
Actually watching other people, going through an interview and hearing the answers, but looking at the interview later and thinking, I don't remember that. I don't remember that being said, or just really paying attention and also understanding that there can be more than one meaning to saying something, and you know that. But when you're interviewing someone, at least for me, I became very conscientious about the intent of the interview and that people were not feeling maybe put on the carpet, that they are really being called out to say what's wrong with the city versus saying everything is really cool with the city. But just being able to really listen and to, even to an extent, put yourself in the other person's shoes. How do you feel? Going back to what I said about community, being a family, when people say things about other family members, you can be a little bit defensive, or offended, but I would say that's how I learned the skill. And then watching other people conduct their interviews, that quiet pause, allowing the person to think through an answer before you rush them to the next question and that sort of thing. So those are little things that I believe I've learned as a skill. And how to use the camera properly, professionally as possible. So I did not, I have used the camera on a number of occasions because I own a camera that's very similar to this, and I've been interviewing my family members for a family project. So I had a little bit of skill from just, kind of playing around with my camera. And then I moved into the Snickerous Community Time Capsule piece, which really found Nancy and I doing this kind of on a daily basis. And then, fortunately enough, I started with the Institute. And what did I do? Move right back into the role of interviewer kind of a thing. So I would say learning skills with the camera, which has been invaluable, and listening and observing. And being respectful of other people's opinions. Although I work very hard to honor the law of reciprocity and especially in listening and treating those the way I'd like to be treated, honoring other people's opinions. Sometimes that can be difficult when you have your personal ideals about, whatever, whether it's politics or religion but it's always a valuable lesson to listen to what others have to say, whether you agree or not. It's just being respectful. And then I believe you can learn something from everything. You can always learn something. There's always something else to learn and to be able to reflect on, So I would say that would be the skills that I've taken from the project.
And how do you feel about, do you feel like your analytical skills have been sharpened?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think you can work with this institute and not sharpen your analytical skills. As I said before, there's always something to learn, and I think it's, a really fortuitous opportunity to work with Rhonda because Rhonda started off her career, if I'm not mistaken, as a journalist. So she has a different scope, different lens that she uses when she's moving in to do interviews and that sort of thing. So the information that she's passed on to us, I think, has been invaluable. There were a few other folks who helped us really move to this point with the oral narratives, the training that we got, IRB training, Mary Ellen Lawless and Catrice Kane. And it's just been really a very interesting experience all the way around. But taking these courses, sort of the prelude to becoming the researcher, Rhonda made sure that we were equipped and prepped with the proper skills. So we had the oral narrative methodology training. We went through IRB training. And it's just amazing, just really, really amazing. I remember sitting with Michael Becker, who's in Media Vision, and we come together around this huge table, and he gave us instruction on how to use the camera, how to put it together, how to take it apart, how to do the white paper test and just everything. And then, we all took turns, and I'm just thinking back about the process, the road that we've traveled to get here. Those are skills, and those are also analytical skills. You have to really listen and observe and be able to apply what you've learned. The theory is great, but the application of it has been really, for me, it's been rewarding. You know, sometimes you don't see yourself doing certain things. And it's like, oh, I'm a community researcher. Wow, I'm out in the community. I've done an interview. Oh, I've done another interview. So I have to admit, though, I have not completed as many interviews as I'd like to have because I am the administrator for the Institute, and I just did not have the time to interview to the capacity I would like to have. But it's a skill that I know that I'll often use, and hopefully this project, as it continues, I will still find time to get out and to test my skills as an interviewer. You know, that's always an interesting communication and an interesting relationship you build with someone. You don't have to know them, but if you can sit down and ask questions, and you guys can come to an understanding about the intent and what was meant when you posed the question, and the other person is giving you the answer, that whole exchange becomes very intimate, and you're able to sometimes extract information that you didn't even know you were going to have. You know, like, how do I handle this? This person is, I can remember one interview, actually you and I together did an interview, and this person at the end of the interview kind of opened this door that she'd sworn she would never, ever, ever open. And it was just sort of I guess maybe she felt like, okay, now's the time. And I was overwhelmed. I just had no clue she was going to gift us with that information. But I'm sure that part of the interview helped to make it a really great interview, because she finally kind of decided that she wasn't going to be so guarded and she was going to just give it. So I think maybe that's also a skill, is being able to, I don't want to use the word finagle, but to maybe be able to massage certain information out of a person, you know, kind of get them to say what you want to hear without them really knowing they're saying it, you know. I guess, and that also has to do with how you communicate, how you language a question, phrasing the question, and sometimes maybe even paraphrasing it, so a person has a greater level of understanding about the answer that you want from them. So I'd say that was a skill also. But thanks to, I'm going to say you as well, and to Rhonda, who have you know, you guys have reached the top of the academic rung. So when you get PhD, then that means that you're really doing your thing. You've done the research, you've done the studying. So all of the tidbits that you guys pass on to us as we move through this project, I think, are invaluable. So it might have been a long answer, but.
No, it's good.
Okay.
So how do you prepare for an interview?
Personally, just sit and be peaceful and really think about, like I'm doing now, sitting here with my eyes closed. And I think about the mission of the Institute, why it is we're doing what we're doing. And I would say maybe the mission of the Voicing Action Project specifically. And for me, I like to affirm that it's going to be exactly what it's supposed to be, and I'll get what I need to. That's like a personal preparation. I like to center myself. I like to kind of be a little bit quiet beforehand to sort of review the questions. I know it's supposed to be as organic as it can be, you know, but I think that helps with knowing the questions beforehand, not always having the, you know. So, of course, as a novice, but the more you interview, and especially if you're asking the same questions, then they flow. And I have to say this, I listened to Lady Red. She is the interviewer extraordinaire, because she kind of was the first person to volunteer to get out there and start interviewing. She and Brandon together covered quite a bit of territory. She was very eager and willing to get out there and ask questions, but I watch her, and when I listen to her, it's almost effortless, but she put that into practice. So she moved to a whole different level, I think, a lot sooner than many of us that are part of this project, because she was willing to get out there. And even if it wasn't perfect, that was okay with her. Just tell her what was not perfect, and she would go in and do it again. And that takes a certain level of confidence, but it also means that she recognized the value of what she was doing. And I think for all of us, that's something that just comes with, I think it probably should be part of the process. It's that unspoken part of the process. The more you do, of course, the better you become and that sort of thing. But interviewing has, I guess because I'm naturally a people person, I don't have a problem with walking up to someone and introducing myself. But it's different when you're interviewing someone, because you're getting ready to pry. And it has to be done in a very polite way. It has to be done in a way that encourages the other person to give you something that they may not want to give you, So that's a skill. And I have not mastered that. We all, can speak if we need to, or stand up in front of a room if we need to, but interviewing is a different animal. And there is that's why there are certain people who do it professionally and others who don't. But I'm learning, one day if I imagine that if I continue working with the project and I have more opportunity, I think one of the things that happens when you're interviewing folks is you have to be prepared for the answer you're going to get too. And sometimes folks will say things that might just take your breath away, and you got to keep it moving. You have to hold that surprise inside. So
I hear you using words like prying or trying to get them to give you the answer that you want. Do you think about it as kind of extractive, or do you think about it as a collaboration between you and the interviewee?
I think it can be both. I like to approach it as a collaboration, but at some point, I think it can be on the verge or the precipice of prying. When you're interviewing someone, and maybe it's just a general interview, I'm just going to sit down and interview you about how you like your job, or how you like being married, or what's it like being a mother. That's very different than sitting down and saying, so, have you ever experienced racism? Even though that should be a topic that everyone is willing to talk about because it is so in your face, the average person will not want to talk about it. And it usually affects the average person on some level. Power and privilege, all of these labels that we give things that just basically talk about, for me, being a good citizen. How do you treat other people? How do you want to be treated? How do you want your children to be treated? And so on and so forth, especially given the history of our world history and the history of our country. And that's the last thing people want to talk about. They'll talk about gossipy things on TV. They'll talk about things that are happening to children, or, who's running from the police officer, and on and on. But when you start talking about race and color and power and privilege, and I think because everyone, for the most part, wants to feel like they're normal in the fact that we live in this world and nothing negative affects us, and that's just not the reality. Negative things happen every moment of every day and affect us on many different levels. It just depends on where you are on the sundial and where you're perched, what you're looking at, and what that perception is at that moment, But we all fight, I believe, on a daily basis just to be a human being on this planet in many different ways. So back to your question about the whole prying, at some point, you really are prying, because this is something that people kind of hold close. Even when I read the questions, I have to think, so when have I been discriminated against? You think, it hasn't happened. But then you have to really sit and think. Now, that may not be a question that you can answer very honestly and truthfully, at that moment, at a given moment, you're asking someone, so when is the last time you've been profiled? And you think, oh, I've never been profiled. But then after the interview, you're thinking about that because it's such a different question. Then you say, oh my God, it did happen to me. So these are prying questions. These are questions that make you take off your mask. Because we are all wearing a mask. I don't care what anybody says, and me included. There are some things that are just for you that you really don't always want to share with other people. And maybe this is just a me moment. Maybe this is my revelation. But I read a book called Shifting. I have it on my bookshelf over there. And it's just about African American women in academia and other, corporate atmospheres where you're one person, but in order to move forward, you have to be another person. And I think that's true for everything that we do in our lives, whether you're in a relationship, it's a new relationship, you're trying to be the perfect girlfriend or the perfect boyfriend, or, you're newly married and you want to be the best wife you can be. And the reality is you're going to be who you are, so we live in a world where we're asked to hide things all the time. It's in advertising. You don't want to show that you're a size 14, so we're going to make you look like you're a size 10. We'll just, use Photoshop and we'll shop it so it sells, that kind of thing. Those are the tiny little lies, so to speak, that really roll over into the larger, untruths that we tell about everything, So that's why I use the concept of prying, because to just automatically ask, do you have a happy marriage? Yeah, it's really happy. But then you think about the things that ticks you off that your husband does or that your wife does, or when her parents come over. And, I think there's certain ways to phrase questions that kind of move that out of the way very quickly. But again, to me, those are also questions that have to be offered delicately or offered from a very cordial, congenial perspective to get people to accept it. And then, it's like you offer a present. It looks really, really pretty. And then you open it. It's like, oh, but you have to deal with whatever's inside. So to me, that's my perception, which might be a little different, but.
And do you ever do research on the people that you're interviewing beforehand?
Yes, I do. Now, I have to admit, the people that I interviewed for the project were people that I knew beforehand. But working with the Snickerford's Time Capsule Project, yeah, I did. I did quite a bit of research, because even though these are people that I may have seen in public but really knew of the establishment, I didn't know about the establishment. I didn't know about the person who owned the business, or who they were before they owned the business, or who they became during the process of, buying into the city of East Cleveland and, that kind of thing. So, yeah, but I think it's a good idea anytime you're interviewing, whether it's for a job or you're interviewing people to work on your house, it helps you to make a more informed decision about how to move forward. And even with an interview, to know a little bit about the person you're interviewing helps you to maybe even sometimes understand the mindset behind why they're answering questions the way they are, and gives you a way to either go in or around, or but still be able to get what you need and have a successful interview.
And did you use the bio sheet?
I did. Now, one interview, the person was also a community researcher and kind of moved through the bio sheet like very, very quickly. So I found that even though there are certain points that you should move through the bio sheet, depending on who you're interviewing, they may answer the first and second question all in the first question, or maybe question number 3 or 5 on your list, they answer with question number 2. So I believe there may have been a time or two where I was able to circle back around and sort of ask the question in a different way to get more of a response. But yeah, the bio sheet was kind of how I began the interview. So the person watching the interview could have a background themselves about the person as we moved through the interview. So, yes.
And did you ever encounter any resistance to someone filling out the bio sheet?
Once I did. For some reason, again, that's one of those things, people don't really like to give you personal information, even if it's, I mean, if you're asking me questions about my siblings, I don't know that I would automatically think like, why do you want to know about my siblings? I would say, oh yeah, I have two brothers and two sisters, but not everyone feels that way about family, and rightfully so. You know, there's so many different ways people have been interviewed over the years, and for so many different things, and you're told the interview is going to contain this, and then the end result is something totally different than you imagined and that you were told initially. So I get that there's some hesitancy with people about interviewing, but for the most part, I think that people are okay with filling out the bio. I did notice that not everyone likes to fill it out in its entirety. It's just very quick. No, they're not going to give you anything extra, just whatever you ask. Brothers or sisters, yes. Sometimes they'd say two or, you know, and then you'd have to say, oh, so you have two brothers. Oh, you know, what are their names? And then there were others that you could just read through and you could say, oh, so you have two brothers, one blah, you know. So I guess it just depends on the person. But to go over that with them, I think it was a good idea that before the interview even starts, that if they've completed it, that you look at it beforehand, just in case there are a couple spaces they left blank. And it may have been intentional and it may not have been. At least you know. And if someone doesn't want to talk about their mother and they don't want to put that information down, then you have to honor that request and you move through the information that they make available to you. I don't think there's a way to push on personal information because really that does belong to you. So if you don't want someone to know who your mother was or what year she was born or whether or not your parents were married or whatever inference somebody may gather through looking at the, you know, your sort of sporadically completed, you know, bio, then that's fine. That's just your personal prerogative to do so.
Okay. You can fix that. It was just covering the,
Okay.
covering the mic. So.
You got it? Was that better?
Yes.
Okay.
So how does the setting of the interview impact the work?
Well, no distractions. I would say that is, and maybe just for me, but for me that's the goal, no distractions. Excuse me, that the lighting is appropriate, minimal to no outside noise or interference or interruptions. So yes, the atmosphere that you create, I also believe is conducive to the kind of information that you'll receive. Give me 1 second, I need to drink some water. Excuse me. Okay. But yeah, I think it's like with any atmosphere, any coming together, any gathering of people, you know, you have to, I think, you should be very intentional about creating an atmosphere that is going to support whatever the goal of the gathering is. So if you're having folks over for, you know, girls get together and they gossip. What do they usually do? They have food they can eat and munch on, and they have wine, lots of wine. Because wine's going to relax you, and the more you're relaxed, the more you're going to talk, and that's more fodder. So for me, for an interview, I make sure that it's a pleasant atmosphere. If there are flowers are always, to me, very, they demonstrate that there is care and love in the atmosphere. I like lighting helps to, I believe to me, lighting for me represents clarity. So the clearer the light is, then we're looking at each other. You know that I'm looking at you. I'm looking in your eyes as we speak. I'm listening, and you're going to feel comfortable enough to connect with me. You know, but again, those are my little cues for ways to make an environment much more conducive. And I know a lot of times we do things at people's houses. So just using the atmospheres that they've created and getting them in a space where they feel comfortable. It's not always about taking them out of that space and putting them into one that you've created. Most people, they have certain spots in their houses that sort of make them feel really comfortable and peaceful and have a favorite chair they want to sit in or a favorite area of the room. And then there are those who are very concerned about how they look on camera. So, which is my best side kind of a thing. But when you play to those things that are important to people, excuse me, I also think that relaxes them enough because you've given them what they want. They want to be here. They want to sit this way. They want this side. So once you've done all the things they want, then they're relaxed. And then I believe that helps to encourage them to just open up and be comfortable with giving the information. So, and then if you're comfortable as an interviewer asking the questions, if you're fidgeting and you're moving and you're going to make the other person nervous. So if you're sitting and you're smiling and I always shake hands when I introduce myself if it's people I don't know. And I always make sure they're comfortable. And I'll ask several times, is there anything I can get you? Do you need water? Or you just that kind of thing. And that helps to sometimes, I think, put people at ease also. That this person is not just here to interview me. They are concerned about my comfort level. And I think that can relax you also.
And was there any particular setting that you found more challenging?
Yes. So I'm not going to name names, but I did an interview at a funeral. That in and of itself was challenging. At one point, the person I interviewed wanted to take me into the room where he prepared bodies so I could just see what a great job they did. And I actually had to tell him, I'll take your word for it. That was a test for me, just to see how adult I've become. Was that something that I could move through? And I couldn't do it. And that's, I guess maybe, that's a personal kind of thing, about dead bodies. But it was a bit off kilter for me to be on the other side of the funeral home. First of all, not coming to view a body and sit, but to be in an office area. And then I was told, well, you're sitting in a room where we prepare bodies. So that creeped me out. And I had to say, okay, just take a deep breath. It's okay. This is just an interview. And then he wanted to sit where they usually put the caskets because of the curtains. It was just, for me, it was staged in a very elaborate way that just took me a minute to get it together. But it was fine. It was me. It wasn't him. This was where he was comfortable. So I had to acquiesce and go through it's going to be okay. It's just a funeral home. It's just an interview. And of course, it is, and it was, and it was not a big deal. It was it was enjoyable because he had a lot of very interesting stories to share, not just about the city, but about growing up and moving into the field that he was moving into when a lot of other men were not, the average person. When you think about being a mortician, it's kind of, very creepy. It's kind of are you serious? But he saw the value and the integrity in having that role, having that as his life's work. And that's wonderful because he's very popular, of course, and he is very accomplished. And I think it's because he saw what he was doing as a true service, not just, to the community, but, helping someone move through a transitory state, no matter what you think about it. That's a very honorable thing to do, So I just had to get my head wrapped around the reasoning and enjoy the interview from a different perspective. But again, that was a learning experience. So I think it's both ways. As an interviewer, you should not assume that you have the upper hand and that you know better or you know more. I take it as an opportunity to see what else I can learn and, take the tidbits away that help me to be a bit more professional about what I'm going to be doing. So, yeah, that's the one that sticks out for me.
So what has been the most surprising or challenging aspect of the work?
Surprising or challenging? What has been the most surprising? I guess maybe in some way that there are folks who don't want to be interviewed. You know, you hear a lot of ranting and raving about what's not right, how people are viewing you, and, you know, they need to know the real story. And then when you ask for the real story, then it's like, well, I don't really want to tell the real story, ask someone else. So I guess on some level for me that's surprising. But then I realize that some people don't like to speak out in public. They don't mind speaking, but for them on camera is permanent. I can't say they didn't say it, or I don't know honestly, I don't know what the reasoning would be. I guess that's a bit surprising for me. And what was the other part? Surprising and challenging. I guess even getting the interviews. Again, the same thing, you know, surprising that people don't want to do it, and challenging to get them to say, yes, the person that you and I interviewed together totally was not going to do it. Just wasn't. And then one day she said, so how's that interview thing going? I said, oh, it's going good. Well, you know, I've been thinking about it. And then even when we got there, it still seemed a bit challenging to get her to answer the questions. But once we went through and then you went back and said, well, I have a couple other questions I would like to ask. Do you mind if I turn the camera on? At that point, I think she finally, maybe whatever apprehension she felt, you know, or maybe it was just nervousness of being asked those questions on camera. I think when she moved through it, then she realized, like, wow, that wasn't too bad. And then for you to say, as we kept talking, and said, well, let me turn the camera on. Can I ask you a few more questions? And she just said, yeah. And that's when it just got it opened up, and, you know, we kind of got what we really wanted initially. But I think that happens too. Maybe that's the challenging part, is getting folks to realize that it's just an interview, it's just a conversation. And when you have any conversation, you should always be intentional and deliberate about what you say, purposeful with what you say. And you should always be sure that you're not telling someone else's story that you have no knowledge of. I don't think you should gossip when you're having other conversations. I don't think you should ever say anything that you cannot support or substantiate. And of course we all do, depending on the context and who we're having the conversation with. But when it's a professional conversation, I think as an interviewer, you have to be very deliberate in order to get the person who's going to be responding to be very deliberate. And sometimes it's turning the camera off, I've learned. That's something else I've learned. Sometimes it's turning the camera off and letting someone really relax and sit with what they've said, and then saying, well, I have a couple more questions. Do you mind if I turn the camera back on? And at that point, you know, the sting is out. You know, it's like, wow, I got through the interview. Oh, okay, fine. It's okay if there are a few more questions. And I'm not saying that's something everyone should do, but on occasion, I don't think it could hurt if you're still having a conversation beyond the end of the interview to say, well, you seem to, you know, to have a few more things that you know, that are substantial that, you know, you could add to this interview. Do you mind if I turn the camera on? And either you'll get a yes or no, but I would be willing to bet that most times you'll get a yes. Because she was very willing to do so. I was very surprised when she just opened up, and I was thinking like, wow. But again, I may not have done that hadn't you not been there to show me that it's okay to take that extra step forward. So that would be the challenge. The surprise and the challenge from different perspectives. So yeah.
And were you able to set interviews up pretty easily? Did people show up when they said they were going to show up?
Yes, I had no problem. I didn't have any problem with that. I had no problems. But I think I'm a funny kind of person. When I say funny, a ha-ha funny person. I like to tease, and I love to make people laugh because I like to laugh. So people that I interviewed, it was always a great opportunity for us to come together and share some space and energy. So it was kind of like, yeah, they wanted to do it, you know. So there was maybe one or two people I asked who initially said yeah, and then at the last minute they decided they didn't want to. But it wasn't, I didn't take it personally. I just said thank you so much for considering it, and if at any time you change your mind, give us a call. And I just went on to the next person. But I don't really have a lot of trouble engaging people. So, and then there are lots of folks that I know in East Cleveland. So I kind of feel that if I ask, in a very proper way, very accommodating, that they would say yes. So we'll see.
So how did what you do actually differ from what you thought you would be doing?
Actually, there was no difference. I was clear. Perhaps if I had not had the Snickerfritz Community Time Capsule experience, I would have been, I guess it's different interviewing people you know versus people that you don't know too. But nothing was different. Actually, I was happy that I retained as much as I did, especially getting the camera, together and doing the test, and, I hit record and it worked. And so it's really funny. I've been interviewing my relatives and I'm very aware, like, is it on? And, lighting, and it's just really interesting. But my relatives think I'm a professional. So we know better. But I have a skill that they've not yet decided they wanted to learn. So for them, I have this magic, oh wow, she's taking the pictures and she's videotaping everyone. So I'm sure if you looked at the videotape, you'd say, okay, this is not perfect, but I have enough information to move forward and to even do a sound check and a skills check about if I'm angling the camera right and, the whole 9 yards. So this has been a great experience. It's been a great experience, but I think everything has turned out perfect.
What about your expectations about the amount of time it would take?
Yeah, that was different. We said, 90-minute interviews. And sometimes you talk almost 90 minutes before people relax and tell you. I did interview one person, and I think it was probably 3 hours. And the 3 hours went by like crazy. But the information was like really interesting, the back and forth and the listening and hearing things that, sometimes you hear people talk about other people that you know and you had no clue they knew each other, or just like hypothetically a parade that you attended and someone else says, well, in 1972 we went to blah, blah, blah. And you think, oh my God, I was at that parade. You can't shout it out, but you're learning things that continue to create the synergy between the two of you, common bonds. I like to think about how people interact on a daily basis. So I always imagine that I have this gold thread attached to myself. And I think about what that thread looks like in the city of Cleveland, all the places I've traveled, how many people I've interacted with, and when those threads like intersect and overlapped, and when they come back together. That's always like amazing to me. So during these interviews, it's like you hear things, things that you remember, things you've heard of. Like I used to always hear about Shaw swim team. So it was interesting to listen to some of these interviews and hear people talk about being on the Shaw swim team. And it's just like, wow, it was historical and context from one perspective. Now it's like, someone that was part of this historic making, moment or whatever. So I think that's probably, for me, that's that connection. Yeah.
So would you encourage others to participate? And if so, which advice do you have for future community researchers?
So participate as a researcher or as an being an interviewee? Or both?
Researcher.
As a researcher. Oh, definitely. My reasoning would be I think it helps you to be a better person, because I guess maybe that could be argued with the co-concept of better, maybe more well-rounded and maybe more informed, because it's a history-making moment for one, and it's being you're capturing it for posterity's sake. I like the fact that you learn so much from an interview. Even people who've known each other forever, and you're sitting, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that's how you felt. It is, I think it's a skill building piece because you are listening, you're observing, you are, whenever you're having a conversation with someone, that's always an opportunity to learn about all sorts of things, whether it's just that you pick up a new word you never knew, or you are able to see that person through a different lens than you've actually interacted with them on. So I would encourage anyone, especially people who want to broaden their perspective on just interaction, people who are interested in being part of something. Most people want to volunteer, but they want to volunteer for something that's phenomenal. It's like, oh no, I don't want to pick up the trash off the streets. But I think most people see interviewing as glamorous. That's one of those things where the mask is, you know. It's very glamorous interviewing people. And I think maybe that's the hook. Hey, you know. But the reality is, you know, it's therapeutic for you too. It's therapeutic for the person on the other end. You know, you're having it's kind of like a free counseling session. You know, you're getting to go, you think, well, we're talking about racism. We're talking about the things that most people don't want to talk about. And those are things people talk about behind closed doors with professionals. So on some level, you are being privy to some very personal moments of someone's life. And I think that's a privilege. And I think you should, I think anyone that's a community researcher, first of all, should be very excited about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and for whom it's being done. I think the Social Justice Institute and the Voicing Action Project are both phenomenal. They are have intersected at a point in people's lives where it gives it meaning on a different level. You know, this institute is about caring about people. It's about showing people that they are worth something and that their humanity should be exalted, you know, that there's a level of integrity that we all have as well as we all deserve, and it should be respected as such. And to be a community researcher and be able to impart that to someone. You know, if someone was interviewing me and they had these wonderful things to say about why they're interviewing me and wanting to hear my story, then on some level that kind of ups my self-worth and my whole level of self-esteem that I'm important enough, that someone wants to hear what I have to say and they're using it to help other people live better lives. Again, that's my perspective. But I think that's a very good reason for joining the Voicing in Action project. And then you get a chance to learn the lay of the land. You get a chance to interact with the city of East Cleveland. And I know this is our inaugural project, but there are plans, hopefully, to move into other areas of the city of Cleveland. So for people who have never lived outside of their little comfort zone, this gives you an opportunity to move across the city, to make new friends, to learn more information about people, to learn more about yourself, you know, and how you interact. But again, you know, I'm an intense thinking person. Not everybody's going to think about this endeavor in the same way. But for me, it's worthwhile. You know, whatever you give, I know comes back to you exponentially. So that's good enough reason for me to do that.
So, what advice, like what specific advice would you offer future researchers?
To be very honest with yourself about whether or not this is something that you have time to do and that you can commit to. Interviewing someone is not just sitting down and asking questions. You have to understand what you're asking in all aspects of the questions. You have to be willing to have a door closed. There may be some questions that you really, really want an answer for, and you're just not going to get one. But I think it's worthwhile. I think it improves your character on many levels. It improves, of course, language and your speaking skills, and even your skills observing and analyzing, and again, listening. To me, I can't stress that enough, because sometimes we have these conversations and it's just kind of, it's rote, you just do it, you're just having a conversation, but how many of us really sit and listen to what the other person is saying? Also think making eye contact is very, very important. When you're asking a question, when you're listening, especially when you're listening. When I'm talking to someone and they're looking at me, then I know they're on some level, maybe through osmosis, they're really feeling what I'm saying. And there are times, and we've all had people talk to us, even when you go for a job interview, sometimes people are asking you questions, they're not really looking at you, they're looking down at a pad and writing, and kind of feel like, what's the point? So I would just say be engaged at every level as much as you can, and then that way your experience is going to be authentic, and the experience for the interviewee will be authentic. So that would be, I guess that'd be my advice, I guess.
Okay.
Okay.
So you said to make sure you're making eye contact.
Yes.
But one of the things that we've talked about continuously as a group is the struggle between remembering what people said so that we can practice the art of the follow-up, and paying attention to them. So
Exactly.
how would you recommend somebody keep track of that? Like, I personally take notes while someone's talking to me, but I try to make sure that I'm maintaining eye contact as well.
That's what I do. Because over the years, I test myself about different things. Sometimes I won't take notes. I'll just listen. But as soon as that interview is over, then I'm writing down everything I can remember. And then I'll look at it again, because sometimes that will prompt you to say, oh yeah, they talked about this. So I have a tape recorder. And whenever I have a meeting with someone, especially, you don't always feel like taking notes. I'm sorry, it's just not my thing all the time. But I do like to listen and like to give my undivided attention. And it can be challenging, listening and writing. And then even the interviewee may feel like, well, is she going to listen or is she going to write? So to speak. But I would just say whatever's comfortable for you. You may have to try a couple different things. You won't get it right all the time, and then one day it'll be perfect. But I do believe looking at someone shows them that you're interested. And as you're listening, if there are things that, stick out in your mind, or if it's something you think you're going to forget, have your pen and pad right at on your lap, and you can jot it down quickly without, really being too distracting with what you're doing. But as soon as it's over and you thank the person for giving the interview and that sort of thing, even if you have to stop and write down some things for a couple minutes, or as soon as you get in your car, turn on a tape recorder. Most of the smartphones now have a voice-activated recorder, and I've used my smartphone as well as used a handheld tape recorder to just hold information that I didn't want to let go of, so that when I got to a place where I could sit and disseminate the notes and, really go through them, I had clarity about it. And then, of course, you can always look at the videotape. If you think you missed something, look at the videotape and listen for the things because sometimes you take notes, and then if you look at the videotape, then there are other things you probably should have took a note on that you didn't, and the ones that you have are kind of like, oh, this wasn't really as important as this. So I guess maybe that's your backup. But I would say just have a pad and pen ready just in case. But I like to give people my undivided attention. So, yeah.
So we're going to shift gears once again.
Okay.
So how do you define social justice, and did it change after this project?
How do I define social justice? And I know it might be a very simple response, But I always think about treating people the way you want to be treated. And I know that means that some people don't realize that they should be treated differently. But I also believe social justice is it's about humanity. It's about giving everyone an opportunity, at least showing everyone that you deserve the opportunity to be treated in a way that adds quality to your life. You should never do anything that takes away from someone, from their self-esteem, from their happiness, from the joy of them being who they are, who they're married to, how they want to live their lives, where they want to live. I also think social justice helps people to realize how disenfranchised and out of balance our world is, and it has been. And we've been, on many levels, coerced into thinking that this is normal. And this meaning all of the injustices that take place, it is not normal. So what I've learned being here is that every moment is a teaching moment. Everything that takes place, there's something to learn from it. And it's about learning how to be a better human being, period. How, my mother used to always talk about being a world citizen. But you can't be a world citizen if, first of all, you don't move beyond your comfort zone for fear that there are all of these boogeymen out here waiting to pounce on you. And then the reality is there are boogeymen out here waiting to pounce on you. But you have to, you still have to be clear about what your rights are as a citizen of the world in order to move forward. Does that make sense? Yeah, so social justice, the Institute itself, it just keeps me on point. Places and maybe situations where I'd be very lax. Sometimes it's very easy to say, oh, that's not my reality. But it is a reality. And because it's not the reality for someone who lives across the street from you doesn't mean that they don't deserve to have a reality as clear for them as it is for you. So it's always a thinking moment. That's one of the things I can say I like working with the Social Justice Institute is you can't be a slacker. You can't be a slacker and work for the Social Justice Institute. You have to, every moment is a moment to be involved and to, make the world a better place. And that sounds that sounds like a Michael Jackson song. But you can do it. I believe we can all do it. It's everybody has to do their part. I mean, sometimes you just have to realize that you do have a part to play, even though systems are in place to tell you that there's no place for you in this, here. But there's a place for everyone. That's why we're all here. So, but yeah, I'd say that's what social justice means and what it's been for me.
Can you explain what you've learned about social justice doing this work?
What have I learned? That it can be very grimy. That it is, social justice is about all of the drudge and junk that falls to the very bottom of anything, of the ocean, of a field, the huge garbage heap, so to speak. The things that are the right things to do are the things that people gloss over and bury so deep that most people don't even think they're real. So that's what I think. And maybe that sounds awfully pessimistic. But the reality is social justice is about recognizing the injustices. And they're many. They're everywhere. And we live in a world, as I said earlier, where everything is romanticized and made to look pretty. And, it's not a pretty world that we live in. It just really isn't. You can be pretty in the world. and the reality is, what does the word pretty really mean? Is that really a word that we should even use? But you have to Social justice is about being honest, I believe. And it is about truth telling. You know, it is about calling a spade a spade. You know, I guess it can be about finger pointing, but don't point a finger unless you're really ready to have a finger pointed at you. So, and it's reciprocity. I do believe what you give is what comes back to you. So, you know, it's about helping people to see that, you know, there's always something to be done to help people live in dignity and to be and to experience what it is to really be a free human being. I don't even know that I know what that means, but I do appreciate that there are people who are concerned enough with my well-being that these are the struggles that they take on. And I can't say that I even take on struggles maybe in a way that I should or could be, but every moment is a teaching moment, and I learn much more about my capacity every single day. You know, there are things that we're all faced with. You never think about it, or you feel like, oh no, that's not anything I'd be interested in. I just learned the other day, and it bothered me so much that my stomach was upset. And this may be true or not. Everything that I've researched says it's true, but that the NFL is a nonprofit organization. And I was livid. How can the NFL be a nonprofit organization that made $9 billion last year? So I was just sort of like, you know, that's a huge injustice on so many levels, the ramifications of it, even the concept of nonprofit. And that's a whole nother conversation we won't go into. But that's a social justice moment for me. I couldn't even move beyond who would even grant them a nonprofit status, and they made $9 billion last year. And that's what we know they made. They may have made $27 billion last year. But anyway, I said that to say the fight continues. There's always going to be, I don't like to think in terms of good versus evil. I think that's kind of, those terms have been used and overused, and it's just like those two words should just be taken out of the dictionary now. But there are inequities and imbalances that take place everywhere. And we are out of balance from many different perspectives. And these injustices keep us out of balance. And as long as we are out of balance, there's always going to be work to do. So.
Do you think this kind of project is important or useful for social justice work?
Yes and yes. Important and useful. Important because, from my perspective, East Cleveland, the city of East Cleveland, this particular project, I get the impression sometimes that if it weren't for people constantly insinuating themselves into the city of East Cleveland on some level, it may just get pushed in a corner. And when I say insinuate, I mean it in a kind way, because if there weren't for people who really cared about the city and just, you know, sort of offering different opportunities for people to come together to change the narrative and that sort of thing, I don't know that people would pay attention to East Cleveland. So I see the value in this project being in East Cleveland, because it is not a project that went in to tell people what to do. It is not a project that went in to force people to move out or to hire some company to come in and, you know, bring some huge nonprofit into the city. It was not a project that went in to take advantage or misalign the reputations and the beautiful faces of the people who live in East Cleveland. This was a project that went in to embrace them and to say, we're here to help. We know that some of the things that are taking place, like changing the narrative, whenever you read about East Cleveland, it is something really horrible and usually very untrue. And you have to wonder, how is this even being printed? A lot of times it can't even be validated. But it's always great to know that you have a friend. So I believe the Voicing and Action Project was important and useful because that's what we did. We befriended the city in a very kind way, in a way which shows that we are willing to support you to move forward in the ways that you feel are important. And these are our resources. This is what we can help you do. And if you let us know what else you need, then we will help you with that. And maybe it wasn't so cut and dry, but I really see this project as a friend of the city of East Cleveland. We just had our Case for Community Day about a week ago, not even quite a week, and it was phenomenal. There were probably 30 people from Case, matched with 30 people maybe, or more so, of people from East Cleveland who came together for a greening project in the city of East Cleveland. And it was such a beautiful moment. I mean, it was way beyond anything I could have envisioned. I kind of thought it would probably be maybe 10 or 15 people from the organization in East Cleveland, which is NOAA. And I knew there would be about 11 or 12 of us and then a few people from facilities, but it was like a party in the park. But everybody was there for the same reason. Everybody worked together. Everybody got along. There was hugging. There was kissing. There was laughing. The kids got along. They were helping to plant. I mean, it was just like amazing, And at one point, I was looking at Travell, and Travell was just sort of like, wow. But this is what should be happening in this place. So to know that we were part of that effort to have, to even encourage community to come out and to join with us to do something really positive for the city. That's important because you're helping people even interact with each other who may not have. There were people that were driving by that were stopping to say, hey, what are you guys doing? When are you going to do this again? Where do we sign up? I told so many people, call NOAA, call NOAA. But how often does that happen? So we weren't going in to try and tear down houses and build new ones and that kind of thing. Maybe, and I know that's very important because people in the city need to have safe places. But I think it's as important. The relationship building on many levels, I think, supersedes that. Because without friends and people you can rely on, the houses will still be empty. I don't care how many you build. There has to be trust, collaboration. There has to be love and peace and joy. And a lot of these things people think these are not, you can't touch this stuff. But those are the things that are more powerful. The things that you can't see or touch are the things that are most powerful. And I believe those are the things that the residents have. And I believe that's part of what we do when we go in. This is a project that is, we're concerned. They're our neighbors and we have lent a hand. It's like if your neighbor needs a cup of sugar. If you have a cup of sugar, give your neighbor a cup of sugar. It's not going to hurt you, that kind of thing. And so many people who could do it, they'll do it in their community, but they won't walk outside to another community. And that's the only way communities continue to thrive. It's not just the resources you have in your community. Sometimes it's about collaborating with another community in order to get the job done. So, we've collaborated with the city of East Cleveland. Our little Social Justice Institute, part of the larger community of Case, and Case as a community, we reached out, and that was something that we made happen. So to me, that was important, and it was very useful, so I hope that answered your question. Maybe, sort of.
It did answer the question about the specific project, but I'm also thinking about this type of project where, community researchers go into the communities, collect oral life narratives, and then, we did the dialogue moment where we were working in community, and then kind of the community-driven initiatives. So
exactly, of course, it's useful for other communities. I see the value.
as deals with social justice.
Okay, yes, because all of every community has the same problem, really. The issues may be slightly different, but we're living in the city of Cleveland. We are the university itself and the Social Justice Institute specifically. We are this tiny community that unless we reach out to the outer community, then we're isolated. I mean, what are we really going to accomplish? The mission of the Institute is about connecting, and collaborating. And the suburbs that are, communities that are closest to the center of case are communities that really could benefit from having a friendly hand, to have someone come out into the community to help them move through issues that they're experiencing, and which are primarily social justice issues. These are areas that are economically impoverished. The literacy rates, I believe, are, and I don't have any numbers, but from things that I've read in the past and people I know who teach in the school system, kids are getting a really poor education. The school system is just about done. There are a lot of charter schools popping up now. The situation where jobs are concerned here in the city of Cleveland is really awful. I mean, I don't see that we could do any harm with what we're doing going into any of these communities. I think one of the things that is really effective is when we go in and the interactions that we've had, it brings the community closer. It helps them to really take a good look at who they are in relation to what's going on. And it gives them an opportunity to say what they'll accept, to be clear about things that are not good and healthy for them. And I'm sure there's lots of information that flows through every neighborhood, but I've seen very few communities where the council people have come together and really have created this moment of solidarity where that community is so solid that they do everything to ensure the goodness and the quality and well-being for every citizen there. I just haven't seen it. So I can't see where this project, what we're doing, would add insult on any level. If anything, it really helps people to really see the value of coming together and of collaborating. And that people, Case Western Reserve University, there are people at the university who genuinely care about their humanity, and that we're willing to take the first step and say, hi, welcome to the neighborhood. What can we do to help? Kind of a thing. So, I don't know. Did that answer your question? Sort of?
Sort of.
Okay.
So I want to return to kind of the name of this project is the Voicing in Action Project.
Yes.
So how do you see enabling people's voices to be heard as working towards social justice?
How do I see enabling their voices to be heard? Well, for one, sometimes just speaking up is the justice of a situation. This is encouraging them to really not just speak up, but to open up, and to be proud of what they've accomplished, and to be informed enough to know what they haven't had an opportunity maybe to even appreciate or enjoy about who they are and where they are. Excuse me. So even the voicing and action, it's really interesting because you either get one or the other. Someone helps you to elevate your voice, or they help you with a project that might do something different. I think maybe that's the uniqueness of this project, is that it helped to marry the two. But it's something that every community could use. I can't see that even these affluent communities that have a lot of injustices taking place right under your very nose, but you can't see them because they're all, puffed up and made to look a certain way. But underlying, as I said earlier, the imbalance is everywhere, the injustices are everywhere, and no matter how well a community keeps it together, if it is not solidly built on a foundation of truth and justice, it's not going to prosper. So I see this project as really being built on a foundation of truth and justice as best we can offer that. And I think that's what makes it successful in East Cleveland. And I believe it would do the same for any other community that we were invited to participate in. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
What impact do you feel the project has had on the participants and on the community?
I think the main impact is that Case Western Reserve University is not this huge monster looming overhead to move in and suck up the city. Of course, I've heard lots of unkind things about the university. And one thing that I've learned also about this project, it's not anything that I didn't know, but this project helps to drive it home, is that sometimes you have to meet people where they are. You think this is 2014, 21st century. In this day and age, people should do better. They should know better. But the reality is they don't. They just don't. And there are probably a myriad of reasons why they don't. Some know and don't do. Some do without knowing and having the information. But whatever the reason is, for those of us who do know, I think it is up to us to share that information and mirror what that should look like. Even the relationships that we have amongst ourselves in the Institute itself, I think, speaks volumes. Because there are other places here on campus where it's truly not a very nurturing and atmosphere where people are able to say what's on their mind. You know, we have very candid conversations here. And there are other places that would never, ever, ever, ever. But you know, we're allowed to be human here. And I think that's what this project does. It allows everybody to reach that level of humanity within themselves and to express it to other people. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
So
That's
okay.
I'm thinking, because some of these questions are not questions I can just answer. I have to think about it, talk about it a little bit, and then think about how I want to.
So what impact do you feel like this project has had on people that were interviewed?
I think the whole humanity piece. When you interview, you know, the questions that we've had to ask, you've touched that human part of who you are. And now you're very clear about where you've been in relation to your life and your life's goals and living in the city of East Cleveland. You know what the parameters are that you're working in. And I think the questions help you to really reach that part of yourself, that very human part that we oftentimes cover up. You know, even if now you were to sit and talk to me about racism, I would really have to think. And I would be thinking of, it sounds funny, what should I tell you first? And not that I've had this life that's been riddled with all of these unfortunate incidences, but I'm sure there are lots of things that have taken place in my life that I view one way. And I'm sure Rhonda would say, oh, well, when that happened, this happened. Or you might say, well, did you not realize? And maybe I didn't see it from that perspective, but I think that's a moment for everybody. But yeah, I would say that it helps you to really see yourself as a human being. However you may have seen yourself, these questions get you to realize that you're part of an unjust world and that there is something to be done, and you might have to be the person to make that change, at least for you. That there is a collective effort going on behalf of the world everywhere, people in the world everywhere. But we have to make the first step. And I believe those questions give us the opportunity to make that first step, to look in the mirror and say, wow, you know, we're part of this. Whether you're doing something or you're not, you're still part of it. So I would say the questions, that human point. That's that whole, and this is really deep because that is it. That's the mirror. The questions are the mirror. Look at yourself and who are you? And who are you in relation to the world at large, to your community, to the people you live with and that you work with? We're all going through it. It's not going to be the same story, but they're the same things. The themes are the same. The threads that are going through, they're the same. So, yeah, I'd say that was it.
And how do you feel like the project has impacted the community researchers? I mean, we're a pretty tight cohort.
More committed, maybe. Definitely like family, friends, because now what I've learned in life is that I believe in the divine order of all things. So I know that people come together for many reasons and many seasons. But our group of researchers, we must have made a contract somewhere along the way that we were going to, on some level, and I know saying freedom fighters might be very lofty, but in many ways, that's what we're doing. We're helping people to realize their humanness and to stand up and fight for the things that are right. So that's what we've been charged with. And it's really interesting because the first two orientations that we had, I think the first night, there were probably almost 50 people in Mather House 100. We had people sitting like on sofas, they were sitting on the floor, they were sitting on the tables. And by the time the group finally came together, there were maybe 20 of us, 24 of us. After the third session, there were a solid 18, and that 18 remained up until maybe about a year ago. And now it's dwindled down, I'd say anywhere between 12 and 14 people. But those people, everyone who was there at the beginning that's still here, went through everything collectively together. And I've watched, we don't even greet each other wherever we are without hugging and just having conversation. How are you? Is there anything you need help with? How's life going? It's helped us to be much more human in our interactions, even just with each other. Nobody comes through the door without hugging. That's really cute because everybody stops to hug every single person. And it sounds probably kind of trite or, oh, no, that doesn't happen. But when you develop a genuine connection with people, then that's how you move, So I think it's wonderful because I know that whether I'm at CASE or not, or I'm with the Institute or not, I have friends. These are people that I really call my friends, and we do talk to each other. We email each other. Michelle and I text each other, that kind of thing. So it's really interesting that we share this common, I don't know what to call it. I don't want to call it a movement, but I guess it is a movement on some level, that there are these commonalities that we share, caring for people, caring for children, not wanting to be taken advantage of any longer, wanting the history of everybody's history to be written as it is, not as people want it to be. And I think a lot of that fuels the injustices. We have histories that have been eradicated, that have been changed. There are things that have gone down in written form that as a truth that is totally erroneous, So we're all really, everybody, we're trying to find out who we really are. And I think this institute, just piercing the veil a bit with the questions that we ask, is really giving people an opportunity just to see how human they are and how they can make it better for someone else. So I think that's how it's impacted us as a group. It shows, I think we are probably a lot more observant of situations, things that we've learned through the training and that you guys share with us whenever we have our meetings. And even me specifically, I knew Rhonda before I started working for the Institute, but just as another person on campus. You see each other, hey, how you doing? We got to get together and have lunch, that kind of thing. But Rhonda and I had never really had a serious one-on-one interaction until we started both of us ironically ended up working with the Snickers Community Time Capsule for a minute. And that was just really interesting because you get to see the other side of some person and it's like, wow, they're human just like you are. And we have the same likes and dislikes and we are fighting the same fight. You know, it might look different, but we're all fighting that same fight, you know. So as a community researcher, I think if you sign up to do this, you have to be ready to get out there and hold your ground, you know, and be a helpmate to whomever it is that you interact with, and to be be willing to be part of a really great institution. This Voicing Action Project, I believe, has grown to, it's a thing, you know, it's like this living, breathing thing now, and people have responded really well to it in the city of East Cleveland, as far as I know, and they look forward to it. So that's the only part that I just wonder, if it no longer exists, how will that impact the community? That's what I think about, because people are, it's like you're steadfast there now, you know, people see you, it's like you belong there, you know, people see Rhonda, she belongs there. And when they don't see you, it's like, where are you? You know, that kind of thing. So I would just say to anyone who's signing on to be a researcher, just be prepared to know that this is a really great group of people. And we work hard to support each other. I think about how Allison has just, you know, if you need a camera person, Allison will do it. Whatever she's doing, she might run really like crazy to make it happen, but she's willing to put down whatever she's doing to come and work as a camera person. Or Hank, you know, even at the very beginning, for people to say, hey, if you want someone to work the camera, just call me. If that meant that they were working the camera 5 days a week, they were willing to do it. So it teaches you about loyalty and about integrity and character of a person. And I can't say that there's nothing I wouldn't do for anyone that I work with as part of this project, because I feel that we're all connected. You know, we're all, you know, we have the same goal. And we're the same kinds of people, you know. We're all concerned about quality of life and about being free from, you know, and being free from all of the muck, you know, that's been created and been laid at our feet for so long.
And how do you think it's impacted the community?
How do I think it's impacted the community? Maybe in way, possibly helping them to see that there's no shame in their story. That, you know, most people you talk to that are residents of East Cleveland, they're proud. They are proud. I think about the people who are 4 and 5 generations deep in East Cleveland. So that says something in and of itself, that no matter what's going on, they are not going anywhere. So I think this project probably on many levels have even helped them to relax a little bit and let other people come in to help. And when I say help, I'm not saying giving them free handouts. I'm saying to show that there are people who are concerned and want to help them figure out how to move forward. And especially the whole concept of changing the narrative. Oh, I think that's huge for them, because that's the thing that you hear a lot of too. They're very tired of hearing people badmouth East Cleveland, and rightfully so. When you live in a city that's shown you nothing but love and you hear outside people saying, you know, what a rotten place it is, then, you know, but showing them that you don't take that anger and internalize it. There's a way to move through that and make it a positive thing for you. So I think that is a great impact that this project has had upon the city, for people that have participated in the interviews and for those who still want to, is that you're giving me an opportunity to really say what's good and great about where I live. And you're showing me how to change perceptions. See, that's something that doesn't often happen, is showing people how to change a perception. You know, you teach them how to identify it, but to show them that there's a way, you know, that's like a chess move, you know. You're showing them how to take matters into their own hands and make East Cleveland the place that they really want it to be, you know, not just in their minds, but the actual manifestation, the materialization of that. So I would say that's how it's been useful and impacted the city.
Right. Last question. How would you change or improve the project?
How would I change or improve the project? Double the community researchers. Double them. I'm sitting here getting relaxed and leaning in the chair. Yeah, I double them. And I'm saying that because I believe, one of the things that may have hindered us is time. The researchers, of course, everybody's been wonderful and they've done everything that they possibly could to accommodate the project. But if you work from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, then it pretty much leaves possibly an evening or two or the weekends open. And for other people who work during the week, the weekends are just for relaxing. They're not necessarily open. So we've had to juggle time-wise the schedules of the researchers and the schedules of the people we're interviewing. If we had maybe twice the manpower, woman power, people power, we could divide and conquer differently. As well, I think it would be a great project possibly to have some researchers on board who don't work, who can take advantage of the times during the day where folks are available and could really, that would really have the time, you know, to do the interview, as opposed to saying, well, you know, Mrs. Jones wants to do it on Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and everybody that's a researcher is working at 2 o'clock on Friday, and we have to kind of postpone it and, you know, make a better fit. Where if we had a few people whose schedules were a bit more flexible and could maneuver it, then that would be great. I also think if there were more researchers, there could be even a certain day where we come together and we go out as a group. And, you know, we take different streets and we go different places and say we start at 10 o'clock and we meet back up at 2 o'clock and say you have 30 researchers and, you know, now you have, just say hypothetically, 60 interviews. Say each person was able to get 2 people to sign up. And that commitment to go ahead and do those interviews. And then not so much space in between signing someone up and then doing the interview. You know what I'm saying? I think that could possibly have hindered to some extent who actually got interviews and who didn't. Would depend on the availability. Because if I'm talking to you today and I'm telling you about the project, and I said, I want to interview you. And you said, good, when do you want to interview me? And then you get to me and you said, well, what about in 3 weeks? Well, in your mind, you might be ready at that moment, you know, to have the interview in a couple of days or a week. I mean, there's some folks, of course, you know, because we want to give them time to go through the consent form and really understand it and have questions. But if we could actually maybe have a 2-week window or something like that, I think that would probably work. If we had people that had the time and were committed, could really do it without question. So I know to some extent we had some younger folks that were on the project initially. They were in high school, but then there were seniors that were graduating. And I don't know necessarily that we really thought long term about them leaving and going to college and not having an opportunity really to interview in a way that would give them the experience and give them an opportunity, say, to do 10 interviews a piece, you know. So it's, I would say maybe that. Those are maybe 2 things. I don't know, what would I do to make it different? I don't know. I don't really know that anything needs to be done to make it different, just maybe to accommodate the number of interviews, maybe, like I said, more researchers. But definitely, I think there'd have to be people who were really concerned about just about wanting to make a difference, like something that was really valid that you could point to and see and say that happened because of this. You know, you hear people a lot of times, oh, I want to make a difference. I'm going to go to the soup kitchen. Okay. So, and I'm not taking anything away from, meet people where they are. That's their level of understanding of what the help could be. So, or the assistance.
So do you feel like the amount of feedback that you got as a community researcher, was that enough? Too much? Not enough?
Feedback from?
Like when you did your interview and then I should have given you feedback on the interviews that I watched.
No, I think you did. I'm going to say something else, and other people might beg to differ. I believe when you're doing something right and when you're doing something wrong, when something didn't go off so well. So the times that you have shared with me, you should have done this, you should have done that, I knew, instinctively. I honestly have not done an excellent, perfect interview, but that's also because I have not gone out to interview in the capacity that I thought I could initially. You know what I'm saying? If I had 7 interviews under my belt, then maybe I'd say, well, Misty, I think, I haven't had an opportunity to reach 7 interviews yet. So, and I'm still planning, if we have an opportunity where we continue, I'm still planning to do that. It's just funny how things work out. And even though I did sign on as a researcher, I did so knowing that my job at the Institute would definitely take precedence over me during the interviews, and I would fill in as I could if we needed more and that kind of thing. But no, I think the feedback was appropriate. That's the only way you're gonna know, how to improve. And it's not that you're a poor interviewer. It's just that there are a myriad of skills that are out there that you just have to learn which ones jive well with you and your personality and the information you're trying to extract. So, remembering certain nuances like none of this. And, I'm used to gesturing with my hands and, kind of lean here and there. So, watching little things like that. But no, I think it was appropriate. I don't have any complaints.
Right. And I misled you when I said that was the last question because I skipped one.
Well, that's okay.
This is the last question.
Okay.
Do you feel more empowered, and how so?
Empowered. You mean as an interviewer?
As an interviewer or as a person? Or
Do I feel more empowered? I feel empowered every day. I don't have any issues with feeling empowered. And I don't mean that in any particular way. I can say that there have been 2 times I've been very excited about working someplace. I worked for an educational laboratory in Atlanta, and it was an educational lab that served the southeastern regional portion of the United States. And its sole mission was to help rural classrooms integrate technology into their curriculum. And I never knew that there were still schoolhouses, like one-room schoolhouses. Very humbling, but very exciting because we were getting these people online, they never knew what a server was. They were getting computers in their classrooms. These are teachers who were able to connect to other teachers outside of, say, Tennessee and Florida. They could connect with teachers in New York, and it was just sort of like a wow moment. So I love that because it was really doing something I thought that was valuable and worthwhile. I've worked always in higher education, so I've worked in different capacities. I worked in public relations, doing some writing and as assistant editor for a magazine at Ursuline College and just some other things. Working for the educational laboratory and then working for the Social Justice Institute. I have fun. And, not that it's a ha-ha moment, but it's a meaningful moment. It's not a chore to think about, oh, I got to go to work. And I like that I have a certain level of autonomy, that I don't have to be here every morning at 8 o'clock, but whenever we come together and we interact, whatever we discuss, it's not just blah, blah, blah. You know, we're always working on something that's making a difference. So I would say that empowers me. So being part of the Voicing Action Project, you know, at first when you said empowering, I'm thinking, oh, you know, no. But I guess the reality is anytime you're helping someone, you're really helping them. You're not just feeding them, but you're teaching them how to shop properly, like with Race, Food, and Justice, the piece that we do here at the Institute. That's rewarding because you're getting people to really think about food in a way that really counts. It's not about, it's about everything really when it comes to food. You know what I'm saying? So I can't say it's not about this, it's about everything. But there are people who don't even pay attention to food. So just like East Cleveland, there are people who don't pay attention to East Cleveland. Or social justice issues. There are people who don't think about social justice issues or think that, I've even heard people say, why do all of these colleges now have an LGBT center? Well, why wouldn't they? You know, so I guess that's empowering to know that I am moving in concert with people who are energized and who are dedicated to making the changes happen. The changes that we want to see, we're making it happen. We're not waiting for someone to say, hey, we're going to change it for you. We're the change agents. I guess that's it, the change agents. So, and you know, it's funny, when I hear that, to me, the term, you know, there are certain terms that become trends and they're like overused. So now everyone wants to be a social change agent. And it's like, what does it really mean? But if you're out there doing your part for humanity so that you can continue to identify your humanness, then I think you're doing a great job. So that's how I'm empowered with this project and with this institute and being at this university. So, because I've worked here at the university since 2002, and I've worked in engineering, and I've worked under the office of the provost. But this is a fun job because it's like real life job. It's not a pretend job. And you don't have to show anybody that last part. Not that nobody else here on campus have pretend jobs, but I think this is an authentic experience. So, yeah, that's the empowerment for me.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
This interview went a lot smoother than I thought. I don't know what I thought, and that's probably what the other interviewees think. Like, what are they going to ask me? And then the questions are engaging. So, and if I didn't say that, that's another thing I believe is a positive about being interviewed. It's not just that it gets you to look at who you are as a human being, and how life has affected you, but it gets you really, it engages you. You know, anytime you have a conversation and it's asking you to think, you know, it's like you got to think about it. You have to put the pieces together. You know, we don't ask enough questions that make people think. Yes or no, check the box. No, think, you know, so no, I can't think of anything. Just for interviewers, people who are considering being an interviewer, be happy about making this choice. It's not always going to be easy. It may be challenging. Personalities may be challenging. You might feel like you can't get a word in edgewise, but I think that's okay because it's an interview. Or you might want to add and just refrain from the ad until maybe the camera's off. But just enjoy the experience and know that it is going to enrich you in ways that you may not have initially thought. It can help you to deal with a lot of the stuff that goes on a day-to-day basis, you know. So, but yeah, I would say that would be it. Yeah, have fun. So.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome.